All right, so get this, you're interested in Spain. Well, Spain also happens to be a hotbed for these things called UNESCO Biosphere Reserves. Ever heard of them?
Oh, yeah. They're
They're
fascinating.
not just about protecting nature, though. It's about finding ways for people and nature to actually thrive together.
They're often called living laboratories for sustainable development,
Yeah.
testing out ideas that could benefit communities, ecosystems around the world, really.
And guess what? Our source material is written by a guy, Clive. He actually lives in Spain,
Yeah.
and he runs sustainable travel websites. So sounds like this could be right up your alley,
Hmm.
especially if you're, thinking about planning a trip.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great connection. And it's fascinating how these biosphere reserves often become destinations for, eco-conscious travelers,
Yeah.
which in turn supports local economies and conservation efforts.
Right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Hmm.
Each biosphere reserve is divided into 3 zones. Core area, that's for strict protection. Then a buffer zone around that, for more carefully managed activities. And then finally, a transition zone, where communities actually live and work. And this all ties back to something called the evolution strategy, which basically means these places are constantly adapting and evolving.
Yeah, it's not just about preserving things like in amber or something. It's about finding a balance that allows for progress without sacrificing the environment.
Okay, so let's dive into a specific example. How about Doñana Biosphere Reserve in Andalusia?
Ah, Doñana, picture this. Vast wetlands, just teeming with migratory birds, rolling sand dunes, and forests. This is the core zone, a true refuge for some of Europe's most endangered species, including, the Iberian lynx.
The Iberian Lakes. Okay, I mean, that alone sounds like a reason to visit. But I'm curious, what's going on in the buffer zone?
Well, responsible ecotourism is actually a key part of Doñana's management plan. Think, guided hikes, bird watching tours, maybe even horseback riding through those dunes, all carefully managed, of course, to minimize any negative impact.
So you get to experience those natural wonders, but without harming them.
I like it. I like it. But what about the people, though? The people living in the transition zone? How are they involved?
Well, their livelihoods are often really intertwined with the reserve. You might find local farmers producing organic olive oil or artisans crafting traditional goods, all benefiting from the tourism that the Biosphere Reserve attracts.
So it's not just about, protecting nature in a bubble. It's about supporting the communities that live alongside it. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and Guyana's success in balancing conservation with sustainable development, I mean. It's a model that other reserves around the world can really learn from.
It sounds like Spain is really taking this biosphere reserve concept seriously.
Oh, they've embraced it wholeheartedly. In fact, Spain has, get this, a staggering 53 biosphere reserves spread across almost all of its regions, each one showcasing a different facet of the country's commitment to environmental stewardship.
53. Wow, that's impressive. I bet there are some real hidden gems in there. Oh, there are. There are. Some are volcanic landscapes. Others are island archipelagos. And there's even one, get this, that spans across continents.
Wait, across continents. Now that's what I call international cooperation.
Exactly. The Intercontinental del Mediterraneo, that's its name, Biosphere Reserve. It stretches between Spain and Morocco, encompassing the Alboran Sea.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It really shows that environmental issues don't stop at borders. But here's something I'm curious about. A lot of these biosphere reserves, they were originally designated as national parks or other protected areas, weren't they? What prompted the shift to this larger biosphere reserve framework?
That's a great observation. I think it reflects an evolution in our understanding of how to manage land and resources. National parks, they're fantastic for protecting core areas, but the Biosphere Reserve concept acknowledges that we need to consider the surrounding communities and economic activities as well.
So it's a more like holistic approach. Instead of just drawing a line around a protected area, you're considering the entire ecosystem, the people who live within it.
Precisely. And it highlights that people are part of the ecosystem, not separate from it.
This makes me think back to our source author, Clive, who focuses on sustainable travel in Spain. It sounds like these biosphere reserves are playing a big role in that.
Absolutely. They're showcasing how tourism, when done responsibly, can be a force for good, supporting both conservation and local livelihoods.
Yeah, that's the win-win scenario, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine there are some challenges, too.
Oh, of course. Over-tourism is a real concern, as is the potential for development to encroach on these sensitive areas. Finding that balance, that sweet spot where tourism benefits both people and the planet, it's an ongoing process.
I bet. It sounds like there's a lot of factors at play.
There are. And that's why these biosphere reserves are so valuable. They're like tested grounds for innovative solutions.
Wow.
And the lessons learned in Spain can really have a ripple effect around the world.
So for our listener, what's the key takeaway here?
Spain is a leader in the biosphere reserve movement, and their commitment to finding that balance between conservation and development, it's something we can all learn from.
And who knows, maybe you'll find yourself exploring one of these incredible places someday.
Oui.
But for now, let's dive into some more specific examples of Spain's biosphere reserves, each with its own unique story to tell.
Okay, so we've established that Spain is serious about these biosphere reserves. 53 of them, to be exact. That's a lot to explore.
Yeah, it is. And they're incredibly diverse, too. We've talked about Doñana, with its wetlands and lakes. But you can also find biosphere reserves in the Pyrenees Mountains, on the Mediterranean coast, and even volcanic islands.
Oh, speaking of islands, the Canary Islands really stand out, don't they? Each of the 7 main islands has its own biosphere reserve.
Right.
What makes them so special? Well, each island is unique with its own microclimates and ecosystems. Think like lush laurel forests in La Gomera, volcanic craters in Lanzarote, and towering pine forests in Tenerife. It's like exploring different planets, honestly, all within a short distance of each other.
Wow, yeah. I'm picturing those volcanic landscapes right now. That must be an incredible sight. And it ties back to what you were saying earlier, right, about each biosphere reserve having its own character, its own story.
Exactly. And the Canary Islands are a great example of how biosphere reserves can help protect not only biodiversity, but also cultural heritage.
Yeah.
Many of the islands have traditional farming practices and unique architectural styles that are really intertwined with the natural environment.
Yeah, it's that whole idea of people and nature coexisting in a sustainable way, right?
Precisely. And it's not just about preserving the past either. It's about finding ways to adapt and thrive. In the future...
Okay, you're making me want to book a flight to Spain right now. But before I get too carried away, I am curious about something. You mentioned that some biosphere reserves were originally designated as national parks. What are the, key differences between those two designations?
That's an important distinction. National parks are often focused on protecting areas of outstanding natural beauty and biodiversity. They often have stricter rules, I'd say, about human activities within their boundaries.
You're saying biosphere reserves have a broader scope.
They do. While they also protect core areas of high conservation value, they take a more integrated approach, considering the needs of the surrounding communities and promoting sustainable economic activities.
It's like zooming out to see the bigger picture, right? Instead of just drawing a line around a protected area, you're considering the entire ecosystem and the people who live within it.
Precisely. And that's what makes the biosphere reserve concept so relevant to the challenges we face today, I think. Challenges like, climate change, biodiversity loss, and sustainable development.
So if Spain is setting an example with its 53 biosphere reserves, what does that mean for other countries? Is this something that's catching on globally?
Absolutely. There are over 700 biosphere reserves in over 130 countries around the world. It's a global network of learning and collaboration, sharing knowledge and best practices.
That's encouraging to hear. It sounds like this is more than just, a designation on a map. It's a movement, a way of thinking about our relationship with the planet.
It is. And it's not just about governments and organizations either. It's about individuals making conscious choices to live more sustainably.
So what does it actually take for a place to become a biosphere reserve? I imagine it's not just about having, beautiful scenery.
Yeah, it's a pretty rigorous process, actually. It starts with a nomination by the national government, followed by a detailed proposal outlining the site's ecological and cultural significance, its potential for sustainable development, and the commitment of the local community.
So there's a lot of groundwork involved.
There is. UNESCO evaluates each proposal very carefully, looking for sites that meet their criteria for biodiversity conservation, sustainable development, and logistical support.
It sounds like it's not just a, one-time achievement either. It's an ongoing commitment.
Exactly. Once a site is designated as a biosphere reserve, the real work begins. It's about implementing the management plan, monitoring the ecosystem, adapting to new challenges, and constantly learning and improving.
It's that evolution strategy we talked about, right? It's not about creating static museums. It's about fostering dynamic living landscapes where people and nature can thrive together.
And that's where the real magic lies.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, from volcanic islands to international cooperation to the process of actually becoming a biosphere reserve. I think our listener has a pretty good grasp of the concept now.
Yeah, I think so too. And they're probably starting to see how these ideas can be applied beyond the boundaries of these designated areas.
Exactly. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about how these biosphere reserves, specifically in Spain, are playing a role in the growing movement towards sustainable tourism. I think this is where our listeners' interest in travel really comes into play. So we've talked about these incredible biosphere reserves all over Spain. And I know you're interested in travel, so I got to ask, could these actually be destinations you could visit?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, many biosphere reserves are actively promoting sustainable tourism as a way to support conservation and local communities.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about admiring these places from afar. It's about experiencing them firsthand
Yeah.
in a way that benefits everyone.
Exactly. Take the Somiedo Biosphere Reserve in Asturias, for example. It's a stunning mountainous region known for its traditional villages and its population of brown bears.
Brown bears. Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you can go on guided hikes with local experts to actually observe these bears in their natural habitat, all while supporting the efforts to protect them.
That sounds incredible. And a far cry from the typical tourist experience of just snapping a photo and moving on.
It is. It's about immersing yourself in the local culture, learning about the ecosystem, and contributing to the long-term sustainability of the region.
This reminds me of our source author, Clive, and his work on sustainable travel in Spain. I bet he's got some great insights into how tourism can be done right.
Oh, he does. He emphasizes the importance of choosing locally owned accommodations, respecting local customs, minimizing your environmental impact, and supporting businesses that are committed to sustainability.
So it's about being a conscious traveler,
Yeah.
right? Thinking about the impact of your choices
Mhm.
and making sure they align with your values.
Precisely. And biosphere reserves offer a fantastic opportunity to do just that. They provide a framework for tourism that is both enjoyable and responsible.
I can see how this would be a great way to experience Spain in a more authentic and meaningful way. But let's be realistic for a moment. Aren't there also potential downsides to tourism, even when it's labeled as, sustainable?
Of course, even with the best intentions, there can be negative impacts. Overcrowding, strain on local resources, cultural commodification are all valid concerns.
So it's not a perfect solution. It's more of a balancing act, right?
It is, and that's why it's so important to have ongoing dialogue and collaboration between tourism operators, local communities, and conservationists. It's about constantly evaluating and adapting to ensure that tourism remains a positive force.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to get a much clearer picture of the complexities involved. It's not just about labeling something as eco-friendly and calling it a day. It's about a deeper commitment to responsible practices.
And it's about recognizing that there's always room for improvement. We can all strive to be more conscious travelers, even when we're not visiting biosphere reserves.
So for our listener, what are some key things they should keep in mind if they're thinking about planning a trip to a biosphere reserve in Spain?
Well, first and foremost, do your research. Look into the specific reserve you're interested in, learn about its unique features, and find out what sustainable tourism options are available.
And I bet Clive's website is a great resource for that.
It is. He provides detailed information on various reserves, including recommendations for eco-friendly accommodations, activities, and tour operators.
That's fantastic. So research is key. What else?
Be mindful of your impact. Pack light, choose reusable water bottles and bags, respect local customs and wildlife, and support local businesses.
It's about leaving a positive footprint, right?
Exactly. And remember, traveling to a biosphere reserve isn't just about ticking off a destination on your bucket list. It's an opportunity to learn, to connect with nature, and to support a more sustainable way of life.
It sounds like it's a chance to come back from a trip, feeling not only refreshed, but also inspired.
I think that's a great way to put it. And who knows, maybe the experiences you have in a biosphere reserve will spark ideas for how you can live more sustainably in your own community.
It's that ripple effect we were talking about, right? It all starts with awareness, and then it can expand outward. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into biosphere reserves in Spain, what's the one message you want to leave our listener with?
These reserves are more than just protected areas. They're living laboratories for a more sustainable future. They're places where we can learn how to live in harmony with nature. And those lessons are applicable everywhere, not just in Spain.
That's a powerful message. And it sounds like a call to action, too.
It is. We can all be part of the solution, whether it's making conscious travel choices, supporting sustainable businesses, or advocating for environmental protection in our own communities. Every action counts.
Well said. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey through Spain's remarkable biosphere reserves. We hope you've learned something new. And maybe you'll even be inspired to plan a trip of your own. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.